soon on DAB. This is Starr Radio UK, the leading Afro-Caribbean radio station in London.
Welcome.
online, on mobile, and soon on DAB. This is Starr Radio UK, the leading
Getting on to
Afro-Caribbean
the
radio
property ladder has
station in
never
London.
been easy until now. Join us this and every Thursday from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. live on the Property Hour Show on Starr Radio UK, where we talk to mortgage brokers, property developers, estate agents, landlord, tenant, property consultants on how to invest or get into the property business and make money. You can't afford to miss this. The Property Hour Show is your best source into the property industry.
Bless the Lord, oh my soul.
What's the hidden truth or mysteries behind the supernatural? Do angels really exist today? Is healings and miracles real? Can I hear the voice of God? Was there inspirations and challenges in ministry? Can my eyes be open to see beyond the natural? Can I operate in the gifts of the Holy Spirit? Can my dreams contain messages from God? My Journey is your one-stop destination to the supernatural on Starr Radio UK. Join your host, Captain Tete, this and every Saturday from 4 p.m. on My Journey, your one-stop destination to the supernatural.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Right, good evening once again, and welcome to the Property Hour Show live on Starr Radio UK. And once again, it's it's not that chilly. It's quite normal, about 9 degrees, I think, and in the city of London, and South London to be precise. And we're so excited to come your way tonight. It's a great evening, great topic to discuss, and very special guest, Mr. Vikash Gandhi, will be joining us shortly via Skype. And I believe it's a hot topic though, because there's a lot to talk about and a lot for every one of us to learn and to also enjoy at the same time. On the Property Hour Show, we educate, we inform, and we believe that with the information and the education you receive, you'll be transformed in terms of your mindset concerning the real estate or property industry or business, if you want to call it that way. It's a great industry to be in. The UK is going through a transition, I believe. But then tonight we're going to also talk about something that one way or the other, if you're not a landlord or a landlady, definitely you'll be a tenant. And so it's very key, it's very important that you tune in and share the video. We are live on our YouTube channel, that's Starr Radio YouTube channel. We are also live on Periscope. We are live on Twitter. We are live on www.starradiouk.com. That's www.starradiouk.com. And also we are live on Facebook. Our Facebook page is Starr Radio UK. You can search for us. And also, if you receive the broadcast that we did earlier on today, you can also follow us on Twitter or Instagram and all social media network platforms. We are available, and we're trending. I mean, I have to let you know that the Property Hour Show is the most authoritative program that informs, that give you the credible news about property, about what you need to do, what you need to know, what government regulations are. We bring on the show experts and also professionals, people that have been in the industry for decades and decades. And tonight our special guest has been in the industry for well over a decade, and have getting to almost 2 decades, and he's a mentor, a trainer, an investor, a developer, and more so, he is a very good father. Anyway, that's a compliment. I know he might be laughing and screaming and wherever Vikash is. He's going to join us shortly. But hey, Vicky, welcome to the Property Hour Show once again.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Oh,
Thank you.
you know, you're looking good. I mean, thanks to Mr. Kumi. Mr. Kumi, wherever you are, I
Mr.
say
Bossman,
thank you so
please
much.
don't start.
And
We are here
we're
to talk
so
about
grateful.
property.
And you're doing a great job. So
Mr.
okay,
Bossman.
so we're talking about today. The hot topic is that are you with me? Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay, so before Vikash joined us, let's dive a little a bit into the topic that we are discussing tonight. So the rising cost of I mean, for landlords and for tenant, is it both ways? Is everybody having a hit? And
I believe everybody is having a hit,
okay,
but personally, I feel the landlord
or
is
landladies.
or landladies
Mhm.
are suffering more than the tenants.
You believe so?
That's what I believe.
I think the debate will start soon.
Yes.
Okay, so
That is what I believe.
why do you think so? Why do you think so? Is it because of regulations that are coming in, or
Lots of regulations. You have to, if you want to get a tenant into the property, you have to pay for the letting agent fees.
you, the landlord, has
You,
to
the
pay?
landlord, yes.
Okay.
Pay for all the safety checks, maintenance. A lot of landlords will have to refurb the property before they put it on the market. Legal fee, admin charges, income tax. The HMRC will also like to have their share.
Have a good conversation with you.
Exactly. And at the moment, having an HMO, or if you are a private landlord, you have to pay something to the council as well. So I believe the pressure is on landlords more than the tenants.
Right. Okay, that's your opinion.
Yeah.
But then I believe that Mr. Vikash is going to possibly, I don't know, he's a landlord and also an estate agent. I know you're an estate agent as well. So that's your opinion. That I wouldn't say I beg to differ, but I
Okay.
must be honest with you that I strongly believe that landlords have been overburdened for a long time.
Exactly.
That is what I believe. So if it's something to do with government regulations, and last year, is it somewhere last year? I believe that we talked about. Is it last year that the tenant fee ban came into
Yes,
effect?
it was a debate. I think we held the show on it a couple of times.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when Vikash joins us, I think it's going to be a fantastic one tonight because he was on the show
Yeah.
where we talked about the tenant fee ban, and I was of the opinion. I mean, way before that that ban came into effect, I thought that yes, it was good. But when the time was drawing near, I then it began to sink in that
Yes.
it's not as I thought it should be. So seriously, it's a challenge, but it has also resulted in rent going high.
Yep.
It's going up, and just last night on BBC News, is it BBC? Yes. London, BBC London News. I believe the 10 p.m. News. They were talking about how London is like for the elite. I mean,
Exactly. They are pushing the lower class, especially in the private rental market, to move towards outside London.
why should that be?
But I don't know, but they just want to move them outside of London. So it's
But-
the middle class and the wealthy
Can live in
who
London.
can live in London. And if you can see this trend, even the council have started moving all housing benefit council tenants renting privately, pushing them outside London.
So is it like whether you like it or
Or
not,
not, that's what we got. Take it or leave it.
take it or leave it?
Exactly.
I think that is quite harsh if that is what it is, because seriously, I wouldn't be excited at all if that tends to happen to me. You understand? So seriously, I believe that that is something that we're going to be discussing soon, and I am so excited to say that my my very own the man of the moment, let me say the man of the century, if I can put it that way, Mr. Vikash Gandhi has joined us via Skype. Hey.
Hi, Vikash.
How you doing? You alright?
Bye.
Yes, Vikash. We've started off with a very interesting part of the whole topic, the rising cost of rent, and also landlords having the effect of having to pay for fees, and who is winning? Let me throw that to you as the intro. Please, before you come in, our special guest is Mr. Vikash Gandhi. He is a director and co-founder of Weaver Rose Estate Agents in West London. Quite an experienced team they have. They are doing brilliantly. He is a mentor, a trainer. He's also a developer and investor. I said earlier on that he's a good father, isn't it? Yeah, he's a good father, because I see a lot on social media, and I know.
And I guess he's a good husband as well.
He's a good husband.
Yes.
Yes. I nearly forgot that. So, yes, I know he doesn't want that, but hey. So tonight we have a very experienced man joining us. He's a professional in the industry. So Vikash, this topic, I don't know what your take is on, because it gets me on the not my blood pressure. I don't have one, but it gets me to another level in terms of passion. Hello, Vikash, can you hear me?
About these topics, especially when landlords are
Involved.
being hit with lots of costs. So I'll try to be a bit efficient so you can be very expressive in your views.
I like that. Okay. Okay. So, Vikash, the last night. Let me take it from last night on BBC London News. The 10 o'clock news. There was a short sort of news about London being for the elite, like the high earners, and the sort of people that are not earning that much are being forced to move outside of London. Do you have an idea what might be causing that?
Gosh, so many factors are involved in as to why this is the case. I mean, the obvious one is the shortage of accommodation.
Right.
So there clearly is a huge lack of supply of properties, hence why obviously prices are so high to be able to buy. Number one. And of course, there is a shortage of supply of rental properties in the market, number two.
Right.
Now, there's a number of reasons why the sales market is being influenced in such a way, and they have impacts on the rental market as well. We spoke August last year, I think it was, July, August, when we were talking about the impact early on about the Tennessee ban.
Yeah, I think August.
And obviously a number of factors there clearly will have a direct impact on tenants. The idea was clearly to be able to give tenants a better deal and that they're not going to be ripped off by some of the agents that charge extortionate fees for them to be able to secure a place, and rightly so.
Yeah.
But that kind of penalised the whole industry when they probably should have done something where there was like a cap on what people should pay, because they're getting some level of service from the agent. So all of these charges, 9 times out of 10 by the agent, is being passed on to the landlord. So the landlord is then going to have a squeeze on their margin.
Yes.
Landlord squeeze on their margin means they're going to probably have to increase the rent.
The rent,
They absorb that cost, take that hit, and then the additional costs from the taxation, Section 24, for landlords, means that they don't get the benefit of mortgage relief when they're doing their tax returns, which again is another cost for them. So clearly landlords are not really having a lot of choice. So option one, put the rents up, which means then tenants are paying that tenant fee band, let's say maybe in a different way.
Indirectly.
Or option two, option two, the landlord sell the property and exit the market. And if they do the latter, then again, the supply of property is going to come down, which means then the price of what's left is only going to go up. And this isn't going to change, unfortunately, because the solution will take many years to kind of fix. So the only other alternative, in my opinion, is whether or not they do some stimulus in the market to get transactions moving, to get more investors buying, and to help maybe the smaller landlords in the market get their third or fourth or fifth property. Because generally the smaller ones are the ones that are going to be able to provide properties in their local areas, in the local markets, rather than in huge skyscrapers that are in kind of city town centres for these big PRS developers.
But that tells me that nobody can win, and when so the celebration.
There is one winner.
Is there?
And who is
Not
the
us.
winner?
Okay, let's declare them.
It's going to be the tax man, isn't it?
I wasn't thinking of that at all.
Oh my days, the tax. I mean, that, to be quite honest, for a minute, I thought you were going to say the tenants, but that took me that took me by surprise, Cash, because if that's true, yeah. And who is the taxman then? We know one person.
If only it was one person, eh?
we know who the taxman is. So, wow, that's a clever way to do business, isn't it? That's a clever way to do business. But I think getting this to another level, there's no winner here except the taxman, and which is true. But at the same time, is in terms of the the rent, the rental prices shooting up. Basically, I've been doing sort of a research as in northwest, northeast, about in the Midlands. It looks, I'm not saying, it looks like they are catching up in terms of rent. Per room, if you're doing, let's say, a nature mall.
Yes. So basically, again, the affordability factor is what is fueling a huge growth in HMOs and room rents, or co-living spaces, as the modern term is. And of course, because the returns are not there in London, people are looking to invest their money out of London, where you could buy several properties for the amount of one, and where each property is yielding anywhere north of 7 or 8%. It clearly is a bit of a no-brainer that if you've got a good managing agent or a good...
Hello, Vikash? Hello? Oh, it looks... Right. Okay. I don't know if we've lost Vikash, but we'll do our best to get him back. He was making a very valid and important point. Let me see.
Come back again now.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
back,
you're
he's
back again.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, right,
Yeah, so
you're making a
not
point.
sure what happened there. Yeah, so basically, we're going to be getting north of 7 or 8% clearly from an investment perspective. That money's working far better for you than it is in the London market.
Yes.
And the appreciation is clearly going to be a lot more smaller out of London than it is in London. But if you're wanting a return on your investment, 7, 8, 9, 10% or more is going to be really good. And then on top of that, if you're then doing the HMO model, you're doing the room renting model, the yields can be even higher than that, maybe in some cases 13 or 14%. Of course, you need a little bit more time and effort involved in it, but the returns there are clearly a lot stronger. So that's where we're seeing a huge growth factor in the northern cities, let's say Birmingham, Leicester, Manchester, and even Liverpool.
Exactly.
So out of town places where, yeah, absolutely, the returns are a lot better. And also, there's been a number of articles in the new year now, which is talking about people. I think we posted a couple of things online recently about people wanting to get their work-life balance right.
Yes.
So people are actually, not only because of a shortage of supply of properties, but also by a conscious decision to kind of have a reevaluation that maybe they're not going to be able to afford to maybe ever buy in London. Maybe they make the first step by moving out of London so they can obviously get somewhere nicer and bigger and then have a bigger commute in initially. But the medium-term view was on the news last night where people are now moving in groups out of London and kind of starting a fresh new life with new opportunities in another city.
Vikash, if you say group, moving in group, is it like the whole family moving or friends?
Yeah, the
or
families
friends?
or social circles. It was on the news last night, and they were talking about a social circle, a group of individuals, 5 or 6 people had moved out of London. I think they moved to Manchester, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
And they made a conscious decision that they were going to kind of set up their lives up north, where clearly they will be able to have a better standard and quality of living and be able to own their own properties and be with a group of people that they know and familiar with. So, people are making these decisions now because, so as in some ways, they're being forced to, or they're just kind of woken up and kind of realised that they're just kind of almost, I suppose, working like zombies, going to work, means to an end. You get a job, get your money, pay your rent, and maybe if some people have the aspiration to own their own property, the finance lending criteria at the moment is not relaxing. So it's not proving to be any easier, even if you are on good money. It's the deposit factor, and if you've got the deposit, it's the earning factor, and then it's the multiples, and then the yield, the mortgage rate that they're going to pay you for your repayments. So some people just don't want the hassle or the stress of a 25, 30-year term mortgage.
Like the group moving out of London, and some people are moving out of London in terms of residential, they being resident, let's say, anywhere in Midlands, but they've checked out the trains about half an hour from, let's say, Milton Keynes to Euston, and they can, within an hour, they can get to the office or they can get to anywhere. Now, in the long term, is it something that as a human being you can do for your working life, let's say for the next 30 years or 20 years or 15 years consistently? Is it not going to impact your health? Is it not going to impact, how much are you going to save? Are people
I
done?
suppose the point I would probably make is I was driving from Ealing to Wimbledon only recently, and I think Google Maps says it's about 10 miles.
Wow.
It took me an hour and a half.
That's normal.
Yes,
That's normal.
But we don't notice it, let's say, as much because it's London. But because you're maybe travelling half the country, you could be travelling the same distance. Sorry, not the same distance. You could be travelling for the same time.
Yeah.
But you could be travelling 10 times further distance.
So, are you trying to say that let's say somebody's living in Milton Keynes and somebody living in, let's say, Roehampton, getting into London, is there not much difference? Seriously?
I don't think so personally, because if you think about it, if I'm going to be driving in to work and it's going to take me, let's say, an hour's drive, I'm driving for an hour.
Yeah.
I can't legally be sending emails and doing WhatsApp messages and communicating with people. I can be driving on the hands-free and talking. That's as much as I can do. I'm on a train, I can be on my laptop, I can be doing my work, I can do my emails, I can be getting actually a couple of extra hours working on the day potentially. So it's just making use of that time in a very different way. So I don't think that I don't think that the stress issue is an issue. I think it's probably more the stress issue of the trains not working that's going to be your main issue when you're going out of London into London.
But anyway, the UK is noted for very good weather though, and I've seen an article come up that this weekend we have to brace ourselves with a very good weather, isn't it? The snow might be coming down, and let's take it. If it doesn't happen often, I'm not being a prophet of doom, but over the years, one thing goes wrong, and the whole transportation system comes to a halt. So, living outside London is brilliant. I've lived in Kent for a long time, years, but I'm saying that it is also, there is that challenge, because if everything is okay, I don't know what Vicky you think, but this is what I'm thinking. I don't know. Maybe I might be wrong, Vikash, Vicky.
Well, I mean, it's kind of, I suppose, part and parcel living in the UK, living in London is, transport difficulties, packed in like sardines on the underground. I think everyone's got a commuter hellhole story to share. I mean, I suppose one of the points that I was just thinking about now is that, when we're talking about, the title for today is about the rising costs.
Yes.
People associate the cost as being just financial. You're talking a little bit about, maybe the stress and the pressures of having to get on the train, things cancelling, affecting your work. But, the reality here is we're actually talking about people are now making conscious life decisions about where they live in the country. Now that maybe on the face of it isn't only just financial, that's obviously social, isn't it? And one of the big things that we saw when they made big changes to the LHA, the Lasting Housing Allowance, did a very similar thing actually, where the budgets were reduced. So people that were living maybe, let's say, in inner London or in parts of London would have to move in zones further out to be able to get something that would fall within their price range, or in the more extreme cases, right outside of London, to be able to have a housing allowance that would cover their cost of living. So, whole families, whole communities of people, whole groups of people that, we're having to do that consequentially of that. And I think that's just now kind of become a little bit more mainstream, that more and more people will have to make those conscious decisions about life, because, for the price of property is never going to get any cheaper.
I know. I have right in front of me an article by Property Wire that London rental growth at 3-year high. 3-year high. That's about the last quarter of 2019. So we're looking about 2.8%, the highest growth rate for 3 years, and
which is quite crazy when you think about what we've gone through in the last 3 years.
It doesn't sound right.
It doesn't.
But at the same time, I'd also say with a little bit of cynicism that that's probably a very well-timed article with Brexit just around the corner. Because, clearly want some positivity about the property market. I mean, in the last couple of years, the rents, certainly in west of London, they haven't really grown by very much. They've stayed pretty static, as has house prices, or we call it like an adjustment or a correction in the market where things have kind of leveled out. So where they were a bit off mark, they've now come back into kind of level again. And whether or not that will continue, or whether or not we'll start to see more increases in that average rental price, I think time will tell. And how many more new cost initiatives are going to get brought in to burden landlords.
Okay. Vikash, why do you think for some time now a lot of council tenants renting privately are now being moved outside London? It's become a very frequent thing that is going on. I've had few colleagues, friends, and most of them, about 90% of them, they're being shifted to outside London. Why is that?
There's a few reasons. So the first reason, the main reason, the headline reason is the budgets.
Right.
So the allowances that they were once having, let's say they had an allowance of £1,000, now their allowance will be maybe 600.
Right.
So the council already has a difficult job, because if they're in council housing, they can absorb that a little bit more. If it's with private rented landlords who are giving their property to the council, having a conversation with them to say, oh, well, Mr. Landlord, are you happy to take £400 less on the rent every month? Because that's what their housing allowance is now. Probably not that many are going to say yes. So that's the first issue. The consequence of that is that if they obviously want to leave and they want to not spend more than that £1,000 or what would be the new £600 allowance, they're going to have to move significantly to find something that's going to fall into that price bracket, because most of these people who have got the housing allowance, if it's 100% housing allowance, they need to use the full amount. You know, for people who have got the top up, that's a little bit different.
Okay.
So that's the first issue. The second issue then is about they're always constantly changing how the housing allowance is paid. Paying to the landlord is the direct way. Paying it to the tenant, who's then responsible to pass on that rent to the landlord, is the other way, and is not a huge benefit, or as seen as a benefit in the eyes of the landlord. That's seen as quite high risk, because the tenant can hold on to the rent and not pass it on to the landlord. So the idea is to give them responsibility, but I suppose the irony is that a lot of the time they're in that situation because of a lack of perhaps responsibility. So that maybe isn't the best solution immediately. And then there's also the stigma. The stigma that's I think tagged with tenants that are on social housing or on some
because
form of,
now
financial support.
when they walk into the estate agents, it's even written outside the on the doors that no housing benefits.
That's right. And I mean,
Seriously.
even with
I'm telling you, no housing, even before you enter, no housing benefits.
I'm not sure that they can do that. I think that maybe on the borders of discrimination. However, this has been the case or in varying degrees for many years. I mean, it's only in the last 12 months that you may have seen in the press. I know when I'm speaking to financial advisors and brokers that more mortgage lenders now have removed the restriction of the mortgagee not being able to rent out their property to somebody who is on housing allowance, because that used to be the case. And with many mortgage lenders, that probably still is the case, but with an increasing number now, that clause is being removed from their terms. So there is some obviously changes that are happening, but clearly nowhere near the scale that's going to be required to reduce the number of people having to move 50, 100 miles out of town to be able to get something within the confines of their budget that they're being afforded. And then the other factor into the mix, then on top of that, is council budgets. Council budgets are being restricted massively.
For years.
Of
for
course,
years.
yeah. I mean, they're having to become a lot. You think about the last 10, 12 years of austerity that we've been going through.
Yeah.
The budgets have obviously been cut, and they're having to sell off and dispose of council assets, whether that be council housing, council properties, or actually council-run buildings, and having to change the way that they're operating, that their staffing model, giving them more self-employed work, getting people more flexible working hours, working from home. So they're trying to find their own ways to work within the budgets that they've got for their local councils. So whilst housing is a priority, they're not able to magic the money out of thin air.
But I mean, with a social housing bit, with a social housing bit that you Vicky asked, there's also the article of landlords regretting in investing in buy-to-let properties. So I mean, they've regretted increasing their portfolio or what they have already, or their investment that they've done in the past, because of it comes back to the taxman. Now, this one way or the other is going to squeeze the market out, because some of them interviewed are saying they'll possibly have to let go of some of their properties to cut down the tax. So and when they let go, definitely it might go back into the market, but as tenants, tenancy has also turned into something else. It's quite difficult to get into a property.
The problem that you've got is that with what you've just said, there's absolutely right. There's a number of articles that had came out in probably the last quarter of last year, and there's already been 2 so far this year from mortgage lenders, where they're all saying that if a landlord was going to be disposing of assets this year, they're likely to do so because of the mortgage relief issue. That's the case. And I think the numbers you're quoting, I've seen everywhere, a quarter or a third of landlords are likely to sell at least one property.
Exactly.
And I think the last stat is there's about 2 million properties, or 2 million landlords, I can't remember which way around it was, that's available in the private rented sector. So if the best part of about 80 to 100,000 landlords all got rid of one property, just 100,000 more properties out of the market. Now, because of those tax implications, and of course because of stamp duty hikes in the last couple of years to try to curb investment purchases, those properties are really only are likely to go to one market of people, which is first-time buyers. And I think the last couple of years has seen the biggest growth in first-time buyers getting onto the market. I think the last that I read was close to 380,000 first-time buyers had come into the market, which is the highest it's ever been. So clearly, that is one positive of the consequences of these initiatives, but that doesn't help the shortage of supply of property for these market of tenants. And as Vicky mentioned about the sort of the social housing market, so there's no quick fix solutions on it, and because the councils don't have deep pockets to be able to go and spend to build these projects out and develop these sites out for social housing, it's kind of a little bit of a vicious cycle that kind of goes round and around, where the private sector is the only real ones that benefit.
Yeah, but is this the case that at the minute both the landlord association will have to come together and then speak to the government, possibly, because at the end of the day, the tenant is going to pay. It's going to come down to the tenant, just like what I mentioned last year when the tenant fee thing came up, and I said that definitely I'll be waiting for that day, and that day came in somewhere in August. I was not that I was excited that the fee.
Prophesied it. You should have done the same thing with the lottery numbers that same night.
Yeah, but the whole thing is that something needs to be done, one way or the other, because if not, everybody's gonna have that feel. It's gonna dig deep into our pockets. It's gonna affect us. I mean, mentally, people that are not strong, definitely is gonna affect them. But
well, we're seeing a lot of changes, certainly in with the tenants that we're dealing with and the landlords and the investors that we're dealing with. It's a very different market of people that are staying in the market. We're seeing an increase in houses being multiple occupancies, so we'd call them HMOs or room rents.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot more smaller units being built, studios, flats, and of course, this is good because it's making more accommodation available for more occupants. But at the same time, depending on where these are happening, this changes the demographics of areas. So clearly an area that maybe might have been once very family orientated, if there's starting to become an increasing number of HMOs and multiple occupancy units, then it's going to change the demographic of the area, the needs, the facilities and the infrastructure. And maybe this is the way that the country is kind of going in London, that the expensive parts of the town will remain principal residences, and the places that are close to commuter hotspots will be the ones that ultimately are broken up into small pieces and multiple units for commuters to live in.
But I have this question. It's to all of us, even though I'm asking the question. But it looks like the effect will come back home to us, one way or the other, because what I'm thinking.
Who are us?
If you're a tenant, if you're a landlord, it's going to come back and hit.
To both of us,
yes,
tenants and landlords.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, except the ones that are being paid by us. So if I say us, I believe, because you understand, we the taxpayers paying those that are not paying what you're supposed to pay, and our taxes are looking after them comfortably so far. So that's a good point. But what I'm trying to say is that the effect, this is what I'm thinking about. You mentioned about HMO and studios being constructed and all those stuff. So one way or the other is going to slow down movement. People moving if they have to move. That is one thing, because if you move out and you've not secured your next property, or you have not completed your transaction, you're going to be caught out on the street. Now, also on the other hand, rogue landlords are going to take advantage of the situation. Vikash, am I right or wrong? And we'll open the phone lines if you want to join us. After Vikash answered this question, I'll read out the phone numbers if you want to join us. This is just getting anyway. Vikash, I don't know what you think about this, because that is what my thinking. Rogue landlords are going to take advantage of the situation.
I think yes and no. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So I think that for me, I think with the number of initiatives the government has brought in, and is looking like they're going to continue to bring in, I don't think there really is any end. I do think that it will become increasingly harder for rogue landlords and rogue agents to operate. In some ways, you could argue maybe it's a little bit too little too late. In other ways, you could argue that they've kind of gone from one extreme to the other extreme now, which is kind of generally how they always tend to kind of react. But the one thing that I firmly believe in is, and I think that all of these initiatives will help to professionalize the industry. So if they can continue on this trajectory, then the tenants will benefit, and really the landlords are going to have to, I think, see through some difficult years, I think, and maybe not making much profit, or even worse, making a loss. because I think this hardship time period is where landlords, the rogue ones, as you call them, will find it very difficult to continue to operate. And you know, the other side, which is maybe not property related, but it's finance related, is about how the government is also tightening up on money laundering regulations. So we've obviously got an accountancy business, so we're quite up to date with how this is operating. And you probably would have heard about NTD making tax digital, VAT receipts now needing to be able to see source original documentations. So it's reducing the amount of cash flow in business. And this also something that fuels rogue landlords and rogue agents as well, is obviously the transaction of cash, as opposed to, you know, documented receipts and invoices. So all of these things are slowly coming in. There's loads of operations. The ROPA is the regulation of property agents, which is going to be a series of guidelines that any actually property professional must adhere to, which will include, I'm sure many will be pleased to hear, deal sources. So, deal sources.
Why did you say many will be pleased to hear that? I mean,
well, we know there was a very interesting documentary on at the start of this week on Inside Out about property investment training courses, which aren't really giving people.
That should be another topic. A whole 1 hour topic.
I think when we get the clearance, we'll be able to discuss it into details. Because do go on, because I think we got about less than 10 minutes to wrap up, but the time is just flew like that. So if you want to join us, you can send us a message live on our Facebook page. You can send us a message, a question or contribution, or if you will want to call us via phone, you're more than welcome to do that. In the UK, or globally, it's 0208 133 2257 or 0208 133 2258. If you're calling from US of A or Canada, is 001 718 303 2737. And you can send us a WhatsApp message on our WhatsApp number, which is 07539 661744, and also on Twitter at Starr Radio UK, Starr Radio UK. And let me give a quick shout out to most. I can't mention all names, but we have loads and loads of listeners and viewers online on Facebook. So let me acknowledge Ashley Carpenter, hey, Rahim Ba, and also John Paul Bowden, hey, and Samuel J. Sapon, Lexis Banfo, Mr. Kinkoff, the man himself, Don Major Adu Ampuma, Simon Eves, hey, Bishop James Corte, Sarasha Nadu, I believe I've got it right. Reverend Samuel KD Ababu, and Ashley again, and we've got IBK, Kwabna Media Dako, top presenter in Ghana, and it's good to have you guys on. And the apostle himself from the US of A, Georgia, Atlanta to be precise. Apostle Bossman Asante, thank you guys for joining us. Keep tuning in and sharing. It's a topic that will across board we need to discuss further, because it affects you if you're a landlord or a landlady, and it affects you if you're a tenant. You can't run away from each unless you're on the streets. Then you're not part of it. Then that's also different. But even the street people own it, isn't it? Is that so? Somebody owns the street. But before we head towards wrapping up, because this particular issue, it's I think it's unending if we have to dive deeper, because where the government is approving regulations, or should I put it that way, or people are coming up with all types of regulations that is sort of to hunt down landlords. It's good to regulate, but also if it's going to cost them, then please, we have to have a good look at it, because it's clear that some landlords want to just do away with the buy to let and their portfolio, and at the end of the day they are going to pass it back on. That we've discussed. Vikash has mentioned, Vicky, you've mentioned as well. Tenants are also going to suffer. So in our own small way, Vikash, what do you think we should do? Let's advise the government, possibly for the first time.
Well, if there's a vacancy, I'll definitely be applying.
That would be great. That would be great.
It's, I mean, the housing minister post is a revolving door, isn't it? They're always making a joke about it, that I don't think anyone's been in that position for more than a year. And I think the last 11 or 12 years, they've had more than I think 13 or 14 people in the post. So some of the things it really is laughable in a both a funny and a sad way, because it's such an important part of the country. Really, it's really the foundation, literally. Exactly. And unless there is some continuity, we know and I certainly know in the businesses that I obviously run, you need to have continuity. If you've got someone here today and then gone tomorrow, people don't have trust in that. And not only trust, there's no consistency. So if there's no consistency, you can't build upon those foundations. So things are always changing. Someone else new comes in, they've got new ideas, new directions, new initiatives. So it really is kind of crazy. So, there isn't really a straightforward answer to your point, Bossman. The problem that we've got is, you need to kind of almost go back to the drawing board and start again from scratch. And that's not an easy thing to do, and it's certainly not going to be a vote winner. So this is what it comes down to, really. I think the answer perhaps is leads more towards politics than anything else.
So, okay.
But I understand what you're saying, because I understand what you're saying. It's unending. We can go on and on and on, but at least let's try and advise the government and see. Because as you rightly said, it's just like a team that keeps changing the manager. There's not going to be any consistency, and so we need to have a solution to this, because it's affecting every single person in this country.
Yes.
Yeah.
Seriously.
As they always say, we always say, prevention is better than cure. And the reality is that the preventative methods that need to take place, we won't see for many months, and everybody wants the solution to be like that. And with the we're hundreds of thousands of properties short in supply. You can't build them overnight. So they really need a very detailed plan, and then they've got to make sure they execute on that plan over however many years it can take to catch up. Because remember, they're behind, so they're not even keeping up with the demand levels. So everything that they're doing is trying to get to this point.
To catch up.
As this point keeps moving, they're still behind.
It's just like playing a catch-up game, but
they're not moving fast enough to try to catch up.
But the interesting part is that every election, I'm sorry, it's a serious issue, but I'm just laughing because it looks like every single elections you have politicians coming up with all sort of numbers about the number of housing that they're going to come up with. Is it like, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's a joke, but
it's a vote winner, isn't it? Ultimately, when you're going to be chucking around big numbers, that means that you might be one of those numbers positively affected by it. Of course, you're going to lean towards that as a vote, aren't you? It's natural. And I mean, all of these things that we're talking about on the program tonight is not just financial. Again, this is the point that people don't understand. there's been an increasing amount of talk time and airtime in recent months about mental health, mental well-being, and people's personal lives in the workplace. And, you know, this goes hand in hand. You know, we were talking a little while ago about who owns the streets, but, you know, I was walking in Broadway only the other day, and I couldn't believe how many, you know, homeless people were, you know, unfortunate enough to be out on the streets at night.
Tell me about it.
That's true.
You know, everyone's got a difficult story and a challenging story, and you know, I think it's just really important that people like yourselves, programs like this, and any other initiatives that are out there, people are doing obviously what they can to go and get the advice and support and help people that are vulnerable, and also, you know, people like myself and you guys who know a little bit about property and what happens and what goes on in the world, take advantage of that in a positive way and shares the information about it. I mean, we were just talking about the property educators. So many people are on the circuit, educating, mentoring, giving investment, giving guides, and asking for, you know, tens of thousands of pounds with no results at the end of it, which is the craziest thing about it. But they can kind of get away with it. So they will. You know, you could also say these are rogue property agents.
Exactly. Vikash, in a nutshell, do you agree with me that the rising cost affects the landlord more than the tenants? What's your take on this?
That's a good question. I think that it affects them both. I would argue equally. But equally in the eyes of a landlord, and equally in the eyes of a tenant, because in the eyes of a landlord, obviously I've been a landlord and I act for our landlords and our investors. So as a landlord, you know, the two main things a landlord wants ultimately above anything else is for their property to be looked after,
exactly,
and for the rent to be paid on time.
All right.
Those are the two things. In reality, everything else is all, you could say, you know, tick boxing exercises, referencing documents, quality of accommodation, all these things. If it was a given that landlords were doing all of those things already, then it would only be those two factors I always find time and time again. A landlord will always be a bit more flexible on the rent, and will always be a little bit more accommodating with a tenant if they're looking after the place and they pay the rent on time. And that's the reason why we deal with so many landlords and so many investors, because we don't deal with the landlords who are looking for greedy rents. Of course, we're there to get the landlord the best possible rent. We're also there to get them the best possible tenant. So if we can get a good tenant and a good landlord at a fair price, then that will mean that you've got a landlord and a tenant that's probably going to be in partnership together for many years, which means that they're going to have very few void periods and very little hassle. And, you know, I think that's where it kind of goes a bit wrong. So those are the ideals for a landlord. And in reality, for a tenant, from what I've seen anyway from personal experience over the last 15 or so years, is that tenants just want to know that if they have an issue in the property, the landlord will deal with it. And that the landlord's not going to kick them out at short notice if they need to leave.
Now you have to prove beyond doubt the reason why you are kicking the tenants out. You can't kick them out easily.
And obviously another topic now is the whole...
Of course, of course.
Because don't worry about, kicking tenants out. I've got solutions, right? And Vicky knows that's why she's laughing. But I believe that so far mine is the most effective way without threatening anybody.
We are in 2020. Don't start.
Why? I'm just being honest. It's the most effective way. You don't threaten anybody. You don't fight anybody.
Issues.
No court issues. It's
Vikash would like to know.
He would like to know, but off air I can tell him. But on air I can say there's a disclaimer here, and all content and information being given out on the show. Please, it's not the final. We don't say it's the final. For you to, it's not final. You have to do your investigation. Contact experts or professionals in the industry. If after the program you need any help or information, Mr. Vikash Gandhi is more than happy. We've got his contact. So if you call in to the studio, we'll be more than happy to connect you. He's an estate agent. He's a mentor in property, a mentor a life coach as well. He's also a developer, an investor, and most importantly, he's a good man. And he's been good. And but watch out for any time from February. We're coming into your community. We coming to educate and shed light on the opportunities and also the choices we make in terms of our life careers or what you can do. You might have given up on your career, you might have given up in life, but you might have threw in the towel. You might be on retirement and you are bored. Get ready, we're coming your way on this show, and we're coming into the community. We coming to interrupt face to face, and we want to give back, we want to help, we want to open up the opportunities, highlight opportunities that you can harness, that it's not closed, there's no closed case. You know, if you can dive deeper into yourself, you can dive deeper into any situation that you find yourself and still come out and win and do something with your life. But I've got the man to do it, and he's right with us, the special guest, Mr. Vikash Gandhi. So I like his smile.
I don't think I can. I was going to make a mention about that, but after that speech, I don't think I can possibly say anything that can top it.
Oh my days! Because that's very interesting. I mean, I was just trying to do my I was just trying to do my own little intro. I was just trying to do my own little.
That, as we've spoken about for a while, and it's something that I'm really passionate about.
Exactly.
I talk about this a lot in local schools. I'm doing this abroad in another country, in Albania. And I really want to talk about this more with people in this country from my own personal experiences and also from what I've seen. So if we can make a small influence with a small group of people, that would be absolutely amazing. So watch this space.
Vikash, I have a very funny feeling that which feelings are not permanent. There's a very funny feeling that if I can get either a government official on next week, we will have to continue this subject, because we need to get at least a response or a solution or something. I mean, to for this particular topic to go to sleep, because it's affecting each and everybody.
Yes, absolutely.
So, right, tonight we've been talking about the rising cost for tenants, and also for landlords as well. Who is having it most, and who is it affecting? Is it you? Is it me? Is it the landlord? But Vikash got the answer. The taxman is winning so far. So far, so good. They're in the lead, and I don't know if we are going to be able to catch them. But hey, the podcast for this program is available on our website. It's www.starradiouk.com. You go on there, look out for the Property Hour show, and you can easily download it. And if you want to sponsor this program, you're more than happy. Your business, whether local, international, we go global, and our viewership, listenership is growing by the day. You're more than happy to calling into the studio lines. Is 0208 133 2257 or 0208 133 2258, or go online, look out for Star Radio UK, Star with a double R and Radio UK, and you can get our details and contact us. There's so much opportunities for you. Your goods, your services will go beyond the borders of the United Kingdom if you are a service provider or whatever you're doing in terms of business. So that'll be a great stuff. But then, hey, thank you once again, Vikash, for coming on, and we'll talk about next week later on. And it's been great having you. I've got one thing: the taxman has won so far, but we'll make sure we'll see if it's going to be a draw next time. And tonight I've had my co-host, Miss Vicky Newton Kumi.
Yep.
And Vicky, is also good to always have you, and however helpful a great, inspiring producer, Mr. Frank Davis. Thank you so much, Frank, for doing the utmost. We are grateful. And all our viewers and listeners, thank you. And join us next week for another powerful, inspiring program on the Property Hour Show. God bless, no stress, nothing less. God willing, we'll see you next week, 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Thursday.
Thank you.
All right then.
Take
Good night,
care.
and we'll catch up, Vikash.
Take care. Have a good evening. Bye.
Okay. All right. Bye.